Where there is discord, may we bring harmony. Where there is error, may we bring truth.
Mr. Patton has retrieved something from this year's mess and may get league tables back on track in the future, but many teachers will remain unhappy.
Schools that are failing to meet minimum standards have been told they have 2 years to improve or face closure.
They are here to stay, but we must accept that they do not tell the whole story.
In this programme, we'll be examining the history of school league tables, and we'll be looking at the experience of one school who had the unenviable position of being rock bottom of the school league tables for the best part of a decade. League tables sell thousands of newspapers. They offer the public a measure of accountability. But how accurate a picture do they paint of a school's performance? Our story begins in Ramsgate on the Kent coast, and this is all that remains of what was once labelled the worst school in Britain, a victim, some would say, of the league tables. What are we looking at here? This was the entrance, was it here?
This was the main entrance, so then the main school was in front of you.
What role did the league tables play in the future of the school?
It enabled the staff to make excuses for the non-achievement of the children. Because year after year after year results were bad and they never improved, enabled the staff to convince themselves that that's how it is, that nothing could be done about it, that Ramsgate children didn't want to learn, that Ramsgate children couldn't pass exams, that Ramsgate parents didn't care, and it gave them an excuse for doing nothing, and failure became acceptable because it was endemic.
The reality of the league table system is that it created a hierarchy of winners and losers. For some schools, this would prove disastrous. The pupils and staff at Ramsgate School endured almost 15 years of denigration in the local and mainstream media. How fair was this, and where did this system of naming and shaming all begin? On the 19th of November 1992, secondary school examination results were first published by the Conservative government, aiming to offer the public a form of educational accountability.
Conscientious teachers, concerned parents and the wider community in the dark about our schools.
5 years later, in 1997, and primary school results publication followed under Gillian Shepherd. Every point of a child's education was now up for public scrutiny. Why did the Conservatives decide to make public schools' exam results?
The game plan was to make schools' achievements more transparent, more easy for parents and the general public to perceive. In other words, to sort of end the kind of secret garden that education had become in the 70s. Very interestingly, in the 70s, schools were not obliged to provide public examinations, and you only found out about when your child had actually enrolled in one.
With the first national publication of schools' examination results, league tables were born. The newspapers saw an opportunity to create headlines and sell more papers. The winners and losers of the system would be in the national spotlight.
The government was keen to get the information out there, and that was very clearly at the time that the steer they gave, and they got their way.
I imagine it sent a cold chill up the backs of some heads. And I'm sure there would have been a lot of argument that, you know, this was information people didn't really need, and it set school against school, all of this stuff.
The idea, I think, about publishing those results would be to give schools an incentive to push up their standards, because they knew they would be compared with other schools, and that was very much the Thatcherite principles behind putting that information out.
The day that the league tables come out is an important day. It's a difficult day for the education correspondents because they've got a lot of tables, a lot of complicated data to present, and of course they present it in different sort of ways. But it also makes a big news story as well.
At league table time, we are completely submerged in bits of paper, in enormous spreadsheets, the phone is ringing because we're trying to contact the best schools, we're trying to sort all the information we get. We get a massive Excel spreadsheet, we have to involve our IT people in sorting all the data. Our sales go up significantly. We sell about 670,000 copies a day, and we have a significant spike on the days of our league tables. So for us, it is a very powerful sales tool.
People always think that the government introduced league tables. It is not the case. The government introduced the publication of results from schools. It was the media that put the results into league tables, and there was never legislation or indeed particular intention on the part of the government to bring in league tables. But we knew, of course, that it would have that effect.
There was a very strong belief by the Thatcher government that if you want to push up standards, you need to introduce a bit of competition, some market forces, and that's why they put the information out so that parents could compare schools, and on that basis they would have some choice or something on which they could make their choices.
By bringing market forces into the education system, many teachers at the time felt that the Conservative government had gone too far in its reforms.
The policies in the Conservative era had a particularly damaging effect on schools serving disadvantaged communities. And when these league tables first appeared, those raw results of communities where schools were in immense difficulties really made life even more difficult for them. There was no extra funding going to these schools, and all they were getting was pressure, pressure, pressure.
The change would nevertheless shape the education system for years to come. When New Labour came to power in 1997, education was at the top of its agenda. How would the market forces of the Conservative government fit into its flagship policy?
This was not a mandate for dogma or for doctrine or a return to the past, but it was a mandate.
Mr Blunkett has set off at an electrifying pace. 2 bills, ambitious numeracy and literacy targets, and even a brand new mission statement for the entire department.
David Blunkett had many things on his agenda, but the scrapping of publishing schools' examination results was not one of them. New Labour ratcheted up the importance of examination results as key performance indicators by setting targets at local, national and school level.
When Labour came into power, I think a lot of people hoped that that would be the end of league tables, but they were to be disappointed because Labour actually realised there was a great value in the league tables. Not only that parents liked them, but also it gave them a mechanism, if you like, to control schools. They were a little bit like the Fat Controller, pulling the lever to send the trains in one direction or another.
League tables and the current inspection system, in my view, don't assist the public in making informed judgments about the effectiveness of the education service.
I think there was a deep sense of disappointment across the profession that actually looking to a new era of a Labour government, actually given a high commitment to education, particularly in levels of funding, and had a real desire to tackle disadvantage, that they have maintained some of those marketisation features that were brought in by a previous Conservative government. And I do think there was an expectation in the profession that league tables would disappear under a Labour government.
I think, I believe this strongly, that having that information really enabled the start of the school improvement movement and enabled us to know who was doing well and who had got the solutions to some problems and learn from them and be able to support those that are underachieving. The knowledge of either government keeping that information to itself or no one having that information just seems now like a bygone age.
At the tough end of the league tables and the target setting was the Ramsgate School in Kent. In the year 2000, only 3% of its pupils had achieved 5 good GCSE passes. By 2003, and they were still rock bottom of the league tables, still struggling to shrug off their reputation as the worst school in Britain. This notoriety attracted the media attention.
Surrounded by grammars, Ramsgate doesn't get to pick its pupils. Discipline and results are poor. Each year, a bare handful get 5 good GCSEs.
Our children would get better help elsewhere.
Whatever happens here, Ramsgate School won't be propping up the league tables for much longer, because in about 18 months from now, all of this school building is going to be demolished. Yeah, I went to the school after it came bottom of the league tables, and in a sense you might have expected not to be very welcome there as the media turning up at what could be described as the worst school in the country. But actually they were very open, and I was impressed by that. I was also very taken with some of the pupils I spoke to, and you know, we're meant to be hard-bitten journalists, but actually some of these children were the same age as my own children, and I thought they really are not being well served. They were nice children, nice kids, but they had very low self-confidence and rather low expectations, and you really thought something needed to change here.
At the bottom of the league tables and in special measures, Ramsgate was a school facing closure under DFES rules. It had only one chance: to get out of special measures and gain the opportunity to become an academy. The man charged with doing this was Keith Hargrave.
Having got the children on side, you then need to move on to the staff and get the staff teaching at least a satisfactory, if not better, level.
3 years on, and I met up with Keith at the site of the now demolished Ramsgate School. I asked him how hard it was to overcome the odds created by being labelled the worst school in Britain.
As soon as parents see it's at the bottom of the league table, of course, new parents don't want to send their children there. Existing parents try and get their children out. Teachers don't want to work there. Teachers try and escape and find a job in a better or easier school. It's impossible virtually to recruit quality staff, and the thing just gets worse and worse. The press turn against you because that becomes what the local population want to hear. They want to hear that, you know, it's that bad school down the road that's causing all the problems, not the school that their child goes to.
For schools like Ramsgate, their position at the bottom of the league tables meant no one who could avoid it wanted to send their children there.
People flock to the school that's at the top of the performance tables, sometimes with no great reason other than it's at the top of the performance tables, and they migrate away from the schools that are at the bottom of the performance tables. Now, if you do that, you get skulls withering on the vine, you get the least able left in those schools, you get it impossible to actually turn those schools around.
League tables have become something of a self-fulfilling prophecy in places like Kent, because they've accentuated that hierarchy that existed of different types of schools. And particularly when we had raw results in the league tables, of course the grammar schools that took the brightest children, of course, were right at the top. So somewhere like Kent, a selective county, schools like Ramsgate were really going to struggle. They're always going to be down the bottom end.
However, against the odds, Keith Hargrave and his team managed to make improvements in Ramsgate School's academic results and get it out of special measures.
Within about 6 weeks, the vast majority of the children were behaving well, because children want to go to a good school. Children don't want to go to a bad school. They don't want to be out on the streets meeting people from other schools and having the mickey taken out of them. So it was a lot easier and a lot quicker to turn around the behaviour of the children than we had expected.
With the improvements in the school's performance came new hope. The school closed down to be reborn as the £27 million Marlow Academy. But will the notoriety of its past league table performance be overcome? The new head teacher, Ian Johnson, has inherited the same pupils that were said to be failing at the old Ramsgate school.
We have 66% of our students on the special needs register. We have 36 or 7% with free school meals. 75% or more of our sixth formers get the education maintenance allowance. But the bottom line is they're all people, and they've all got parents who, for the absolute most part, want their youngsters to do better than they've done.
How did you go about finding out more about the deprivation and the situation within the immediate community of the school?
I wandered around. I came and spoke to the people, because you can look at figures and statistics, but you really need to go and talk to the people and get a sense of what a place is like firsthand, I think, to understand what you're going to be taking on. There was a community, I felt, that deserved a whole lot better than being labelled as awful because there was an awful school on their doorstep that most of them chose not to send their sons or daughters to.
Ian believes he can turn things around. Having visited the school back in 2005, I can see a new confidence in the pupils, as yet not reflected in their league table position.
I think that in myself I've got more confidence and I feel like I'm achieving something, even though I have little hiccups here and there. But I think I've really changed.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Grades going up now and it's more improving.
Do you know of something called a league table? Have you ever heard of the phrase league tables?
Yes.
If I said that to you, what does a league table mean to you? What is it?
Football.
What does a league table mean to you in connection with a school?
Like a competition.
About exam results.
Who's first, who's
How
better.
do you think Marlow Academy is seen in the kind of school league tables now?
Well, we used to be the lowest, but I reckon we're creeping up really quickly.
I'm not that worried about league tables and where we are, because the progress we're making, we're gonna very quickly get out of that bottom 500.
Yeah.
But a school's much more than league tables in that particular measure. One of our catchphrases is a school for the 21st century, and I'd like to think that rather than churning out the old tried and tested things that schools have been doing for years, what we've tried to do is to bring about change, indeed transformation, using all sorts of innovative ideas. And so our school day from 8:30 till 5 o'clock, with the breakfast club that starts at 7:30, our 2-hour learning sessions with the breaks that the teacher can put in at some point, but they choose which point it is in that session.
I've learned many things, son. Cocktail phase with all their...
And I think that traditional way that schools are organised around bells, and is it 50 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes for each lesson, and everyone moving at the same time, and the long queue for lunch and all that, I think that's got to go, because it's not how we organise ourselves in the adult world.
But I said earlier on, I've seen your hand and I'll come back to you.
The recent emergence of the Contextual Value Added, or CVA measure, aiming to help level the playing field for schools working in tough catchment areas, has not been without its critics. For the Marlow Academy, which remains near the bottom of the national raw league tables, but is near the top of the CVA tables, it's seen as a means of more fairly reflecting all their hard work and achievements.
I'm delighted to congratulate you and your school on the excellent performance you demonstrated at Key Stage 4, Year 11 last year, and the 2006 Achievement Attainment Tables published today. The results for your school show you amongst the top performing schools based on the Key Stage 2 to 4 Contextual Value Added measure.
I think contextually value added has made a real difference, particularly to those schools which may have been doing a good job but were right down the bottom end of the table. Schools like Ramsgate, for example, now that they're doing much better, but they're still, overall fairly low in the league tables on their raw results. But what CVA does is it shows that they are doing a very good job with those pupils compared to similar pupils at other schools elsewhere in the country. And I think that gives an enormous fillip to the school, to the staff, and also to the pupils to know that actually they are doing well, they are moving in the right direction, whereas the raw result was a very crude measure and didn't really give credit to lots of schools like Ramsgate for what they were actually achieving.
If you look at the 5% with English and maths, that puts us in the bottom 500 schools in the whole country. We're not the bottom school, but we're fairly close to the bottom. But if you look at our contextual value added, which I think is a much better way to look at it, we were one of the 5% top schools in the country and got our letter from the schools minister saying well done. So you can look at it in all sorts of ways, but the bottom line is our results showed tremendous progress last year and gave all of us confidence that our way of working is already bringing success. We've got quite challenging targets for the current academic year. We're hoping to get 40% of our Year 11 students through with 5A to C and 20% with English and Maths, which would be a considerable achievement. But again, it's going to give us a springboard to move on to better things. Our students can achieve, and in the right environment, they are doing and will continue to do so.
There's little doubt that league tables are here to stay, but the landscape in which they exist is radically changing. Vocational qualifications, personalised learning, diplomas. How will tomorrow's league tables measure all this variety?
Yeah, I think the evolution of league tables is not over by any means. We've seen a lot of changes in the last few years. I'm sure we've got more to come. And I think the big change that could affect all this is this agenda of personalised learning. Now, the government already says it wants children to be tested when they're ready. Now, they're insisting that league tables will stay, but it's quite hard to see how league tables can be fair if some children are taking the tests at the end of Key Stage 3 at 14, and some have taken them at 13, some have even taken them at 12. So there's a difficulty there as well. They also are trying to encourage more teacher assessment, but that contradicts also with the aims of league tables. So I think we're going to see some real changes ahead, but it's a little bit difficult to see how league tables can survive. But politically, the government says they want them to. So I think it's going to be a fascinating one to watch, that.
As they continue to refine their measurements, the stress of getting the annual results will no doubt remain for head teachers and schools.
I was as nervous as anything last summer, far more than I've ever been before as a head teacher.
Did you sleep the night before?
I woke up pretty early, about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and was actually quite delighted at 8 o'clock when my sponsor, Roger DeHaan, phoned up and said, what are the results here? And he'd been up since 2 o'clock. And so we're both sweating on these things. I actually worked out the percentages myself. And the rewards are great when you actually realise you've succeeded in meeting that target. It's great for you and it's great for your school. But when the young people come in and they're getting their results and they're on to their next stage, I mean, that's the biggest reward of all, really.
Spread my wings open wide. Look out, baby.
No matter how sophisticated the league tables become, can they ever truly measure the day-to-day triumphs that really matter in education? Do you see, as a teacher, league tables as a positive tool, or as something you simply dread coming out because it's not an accurate reflection of what's actually going on in a school?
I wouldn't dread the results coming out, probably ever, because I don't honestly feel they reflect the true goings-on of the inside of a working environment within a school. Yes, there's an accountability. Yes, it's right that the taxpayers know exactly what schools are performing well and what aren't. But it's not unless you're actually on the inside working every day with the staff, with the students. It's not unless you're actively involved in that school environment you really know what's going on. A tiny percentage of 5A-Cs could be churned out at the end of the year, but then you've got happy students who are working to their strengths in a very happy environment. For me, I would almost say, you know, I'd sooner opt for the happier students.
So I'm gonna change my life, make things right.
As a school system, there's a danger that we only talk about the things we can measure. So what's the saying? We value what we measure rather than measure what we value. And I think we're still into that, valuing what we measure rather than measuring what we value.
Wings open wide.
It's like all the teachers are supporting you, like in your lessons, and like making you look forward in life instead of keep looking back. So they're making you look forward in life, so they're helping you, like what jobs you want to do to get the qualifications and everything like that.
But how does it make you feel as principal of this school, hearing what these girls are saying?
Well, I'm kind of happy. I'm kind of proud.
Sir, can I say one thing?
See,
can I have your tie, please?
Yeah,
it's pink and black.
Not for tonight, because unfortunately I'm not changing tonight. This is me for the disco tonight.
That is your Valentine's
Are you joking?
tie.
This is my Valentine's tie.
Are you joking?
We're all aware of league tables, we're all aware of how we're going to be judged at the end of every school year, but there's a whole lot more to a school than that bit of paper with the various figures that it gives. And at best, to the outsider, it's kind of a ready reckoner. And you need to look underneath that. You need to go into the school and actually see what it's like. A league table won't tell you about the ethos. It won't tell you about the relationships between the young people and the adults. It won't tell you about a school's procedures for bullying. A school is about the people that are there. It's about the community. And yes, the figures are a representation of that, but they're just a very small part in terms of judging it.